I'm Andy Villamarzo with SBLive Sports Florida, and we're here for the Coastal. This is episode 4, and we bring on another special guest to the show, Kevin Perkins with Marketable Sports. He also has a podcast called Surrounded by Sports, and his coverage is over in the Florida Panhandle. Kevin, thank you for coming on with us today, and just saw you a couple weeks ago, and I mean, everything's popping over there in the Panhandle.
Man, it is. Well, I'm sure everybody feels the same way. Everybody, you were at the media day. Everybody that walked in the door thinks they're really good, right?
Yep.
Everybody. I'm sure that goes all the way up into. How many media days have you done, Andy?
I've done only 2. I do have another one here upcoming, so I wish I could get to every single one of them, but I mean, 2 is it's a good amount of time.
So you've seen 30 teams.
I've seen almost 50 teams.
Yeah, all of them think they're good.
I do believe everyone thinks they're good. No, what last season they are basically new year, new me, clean slate. Let's go.
Right, as well they should. Right, as well you should feel good about what you're doing and how your team looks and all that. I thought the media day went great with Marketable Sports. We were in the press room. We had the news journal there. We had the local WEAR TV there with Shugart. We had Brian Lester with the Navarre Press there, and all of us were in that room doing our thing. And I thought the players and coaches were more than willing with their time, and I got a kick out of it. I hope you did.
Oh yeah, it was great to meet all the I don't want to say personalities, but it was just like meeting new coaches, players I've never met before, only through Twitter. So everything was kind of like trying to recognize, put the person to the face that I see via Twitter, or now it's X, right? So it's not even Twitter anymore.
Right. It's no longer the Twitter machine.
The X machine. And
that sounds intimidating.
I know, right? Well, some of those players were at Panhandle Media Day. Some of those kids,
right.
I mean, John Daniels, the Florida State commitment, the offensive tackle from Pine Forest. I mean, everything I saw on film, I mean, taking a look at him, it's crazy to think he's a teenager, but I mean, this kid is a big, imposing figure, and I expect him in the Eagles. I just did that piece the other day, 5 reasons to believe why the Eagles are going to be just fine under Coach Tony Carter, who was previously at Navarre. And you got to talk to him as like I did. I mean, what did you take from Coach Carter and kind of his plans to, keep everything going over at Pine Forest the way it has been?
Well, obviously, Ronnie Douglas did a great job over there, and they were doing well. And bringing in a new coach and a new system, I think actually his son, Dwayne Carter, did the majority of the talking along with the defensive coordinator. And you're talking about implementing a completely different system while trying to continue because Pine Forest has always had that reputation of they're going to grind you down.
Right.
And so with Carter saying, I have one of the best, and Miguel Brock, I have one of the best running backs, he said, in the nation. He didn't say state, he didn't say city. And he said, I got John. I'm going to get the ball to more running backs. I'm going to try to get Brock out into the flat a little bit, let him go one-on-one with corners and safeties. It sounds great. They have 3 of the best defensive backs in the city. That sounds great. They're loaded with talent. Can you get all of that and change the offense quick enough to, early in the season, there may be a hiccup or 2. That won't mean they can't do damage in the playoffs.
Right.
Because once they get it figured out, they could be off and running. But like you said, their whole plan is to maintain that toughness while getting talented athletes in one-on-one matchups and being diverse on defense. So, the defense coordinator was excited. He was talking about going everything from 1 man up front to 4 up front and moving it around. And with the multiple good defensive backs, he feels like he can get away with that. So it's going to be fun to see how he does it.
I would say the one team that I felt like really wanted to face them again, and I know it was the team that, let's just call it what it was an upset in the playoffs, Choctaw. They were able to beat them on a last-second field goal. Nobody really expected them to pull off that upset, and they mentioned they want that matchup again. And I don't know if they feel like they've heard too much chatter over the offseason that that was a fluke win. They should have never beat them. But the Indians under Frank Beasley, they return a lot of talent like Pine Forest, but at the right positions at quarterback and running back, because you got Jesse Winslet back, you got Cole Tab, a Stanford commit at running back. Getting to see him and Winslet against Columbia in the region final. I mean, that this Tab kid, I thought his thighs are they're like tree trunks. I mean, this kid is a big, well put together kid. That's why I'm like, I know the rap on Panhandle football is like, oh, they're all the way over there. They don't see the kind of talent Miami kids see, Tampa kids see, Orlando kids see. But I'm still like, this kid took Cole Tab. He could play anywhere. He could be a good player in Miami. He could be a good player in, Naples, Tampa, Orlando, Jacksonville. I mean, Choctaw's got some good players.
Choctaw is always big. They're always physical, and they currently also have a great track program. And when you put those things together, when you put the track program along with physicality, that's what you're looking for football, right? You got guys that can run. Like you said, Winslet's been tearing up and it's always tricky because people roll their eyes when you say he's been really lighting up the 7-on-7 circuit, right? Because nobody wants to take that serious. But he has been, and he's been making, and remember now, to me, Pine Forest and Choctaw are flipping positions this year. Because Choctaw came on at the end of the year, right, whereas Pine Forest is trying to put in something new, and hopefully it's going to work to where they're kicking on all cylinders when they get back from they're taking on IMG late in the year. And to let you know where they're, also that kind of lets you know what Carter, when somebody says they take on all comers and then they schedule IMG, they're not lying to you, right? Mm-hmm. But Choctaw is the favorite in that division. Well, they may be. Escambia is going to be really, really good as well. But you have Winslet, you have Tab, and like you said, the newly joining the ACC, Stanford, went out there and got him.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think they're going to be fantastic, and I think that they're the front runners if Escambia isn't. But Escambia is loaded, and do you want to talk about Escambia for a second?
Oh yeah, I do not want to forget about Mike Bennett and his voice, because I did when I went up on stage and kind of talked about the temperature of the Panhandle from a state level, and then the moment I got off, somebody was like, Mike Bennett and those guys right there, and they feel like they're right in that conversation. And after talking to him for a little bit and doing my due diligence of really digging into it, my tune kind of changed. It had to change, because talking to more people, and this is what helps, getting to be there and really getting to know a little bit more, I was able to say Escambia is going to be a player in this. Because this is a program that's not far removed from appearing in a state championship game. So touch on the Escambia.
Well, first of all, Mike's no stranger to Mike's been making deep runs in the playoffs for 20 years, more than that. And he was at PHS. He won a state championship there. His assistant coach, Gary Cowart. I went to college with Gary Cowart. That guy is a fantastic defensive coordinator. And Mike probably told you, in their playoff game, they lost. They held the other team to 25 total yards. Yep. And that's a game they lost. And he's got a lot of that defense back. LaDarian Clarity is going to be a name you're going to hear rising up these boards I'll tell you, we did their spring game. He was at a track meet, finished second. Did he win the thing or did he finish second? I'm trying to remember real quick. Anyway, I think he won the long jump or finished second one. Shoots back, puts on his pads, catches a 50-yard touchdown. That's the level athlete you're talking about.
Oh,
okay. Right? And he's, you're going to see him rise up the boards this year as the season goes on. And you've got the Hall kid taking over at quarterback. I think you noticed when you talk to him, the players think he's going to be just fine there. People worried about him a little bit. Brooks is a younger running back, but he's a strong running back. I like Mike's really high on his defensive line. He's high on his corners. I think they're going to be tough. That's the neat thing. The Choctaw Pine Forest thing is going to be tough right there.
And I don't think the teammates of Hall were just like, well, we'll be okay. They took it another step. They said we'll be even better than last year, and I don't think that's anything to slight their starter from last season. Which I looked at the numbers. I said this kid was pretty good, but
He's a good player.
they're saying Hall can be even better, and that's where and Coach Bennett kind of alluded to that too. But more with a we'll wait and see kind of let him prove himself and let's see what he does. But I definitely think his teammates believe he's got it. He's got the tools and he's got the dudes around him. So Escambia definitely going to be a player this season, and the Gators definitely have changed my mind. Going over, we're going to go around, bounce around here. We got Fort Walton Beach, got Bobby Clayton. He leaves Gulf Breeze. He heads over, and they start getting some players. Start getting some dudes, and I know they were the last team of the day, but he's got a pretty good group. And you're talking about a Vikings team that was well below 500 last season, and I think expectations are to be over the 500 mark and be in the playoffs. I mean, I think things have kind of totally changed. What was your take from talking to him and then just knowing the guy, like how he's going to turn this thing around, kind of like from worst to first?
Sadly, I did not get to talk to Bobby during that particular media day. I actually am around Gulf Breeze a pretty good bit though, and he is a fantastic football coach. And he was able to keep continuity on his staff. He was able to bring a lot of his guys to Fort Walton with him. He was able to get some players from different areas, some from the Gulf Breeze area, some from, mix and match, that kind of thing, right? And I think it's just really hard to, in year one, make a huge leap. I think Clayton thinks he can do it, and I'm not going to doubt him. He's a really good football coach, but it's tough to completely pivot from a team that wasn't very good at all to a team that is good. It's a tough gig.
I did drive by that school just along my way back, my long track back to the Tampa Bay area, and wanted to stop by some of these schools. And I've been seeing these just aerial photos of the new turf and just seeing the water in the background and this beautiful facility. And I drove up and I looked and I go, man, I mean, not that you use a stadium to kind of attract players, but I guess it looks like a great place to play a high school football game. So it's almost like you do see social media kind of get eyes wandering, and I could see, that stadium definitely it's a big stadium. I'm thinking Friday nights that thing is going to be packed, and they're expecting to do some things to make sure the crowd comes out on Friday nights.
I agree with you there. Why wouldn't you use a stadium to recruit? It's an enticing environment, right? You can tell that the community's invested, not that, Gulf Breeze is invested in their programs as well, but I understand why he would go. I'm happy for him. He seems to be happy there. And like you said, brand new turf, beautiful stadium, the water's right there. Hey, that's a good spot to be in if you're a head coach.
Yeah. Well, all these schools are kind of close to the water. I drove by Navarre. That was another school that was along the way. Notice it's like pretty much just 5 minutes or so off of that main highway that kind of goes along the coastline. And it's this saying I've been hearing from Irish Bill that's up that way. He always says it's greater to be a Raider, and I finally got to see it. He says that a lot. I see that on his tweets every day, and I saw it against the fence line there, and I finally got to see their stadium. And talking to Coach Jay Walls, I know he lost some guys, but he's excited about what he's got coming back. And they were 8-3 last season. Good program. I mean, he always has Raiders in the thick of things. And this season, Hunter Feister obviously is coming back as one of the top signal callers in the Panhandle area. I mean, what did you take away from them from media day, and what are you expecting out of the Raiders?
Well, I got the same thing from coach as you did. He's excited. I think he told me he's got 20 kids coming back. You know, Terrence Marshall had the labrum issue, but they're hoping he's back week 1, more likely week 2 or 3. But that's, he's a really good. FSU, Kentucky, Mississippi State are looking at him. So he's one of maybe the fastest guy around here. And you couple that with the fact that he's 6'2", hey, that's pretty good. And then his brother, really, really good as well, plays good corner and wide receiver. The offense, I think, if he's got 20 starters back, I think the bulk of those guys are on offense. So they're going to score a lot. And I think the secondary is fairly intact. So I feel like they're going to score points early, and then early in the season, they're going to score points and win games that way. And then it's going to become a full, well-rounded ball club as the season goes on. And I get it. When you can see he's excited, and he's excited to be able to say, I got him back. I got all these guys back.
Right.
That's fun.
Yeah, and just knowing that or hearing from him when they get a good opponent in on a Friday night, that place is like, and some of the places along that Panhandle, they pack it out on a Friday night. It's like the old school vibes that people kind of dream of, where high school football is just live. I mean, you got 5, 6, 7,000 people packing out a stadium, and it's like standing room only. And he pointed to some opponents, and one of those opponents, Niceville, which I've only heard it's like stuff of legend of that area. Just they get good crowds on any given Friday night against anybody. And well, it wasn't Coach Thompson that was there as his assistant, and Coach Robinson. But I mean, still, he was able to talk about the program a little bit with me. And they got a lot of home games this season, by the way. I think they got 8 home games, 7.
Niceville?
Yeah. They got a lot.
First of all, what you were talking about with packing stadiums. Choctaw packs that stadium. Navarre packs that stadium. Niceville packs that stadium. And that's always great to hear about Friday nights. But when you're talking about Niceville, we got the transfer in from IMG, Nino Freeman. Is he going to be able to figure it all out quickly? Probably so. DJ Shorts is a great player. That I think they're going to be. Look, Niceville's got a kid right now fighting for time for the Dallas Cowboys. They got another kid fighting for time with Florida State. They put out good football players over there. Both those Thomases are the Thomases are who I'm talking about there. And so I think they're going to be great. I think it'll be real good, real good.
Well, all I keep hearing from them, because I've done 2 versions of this story of who's got the best Friday night vibe in the Sunshine State. And we're not just talking, Panhandle area. We're talking about everywhere. Right. Throwing in all these different stadiums and places I've been to as well. Like, I've been down to Venice on a Friday night. That's a good little town, suburban place. It's kind of a coastal town, really. They have a good vibe. Lakeland in Polk County. I mean, talk about state championships. You got the little dreadnought golf cart going onto the field, and they got the loudest I've ever heard. It gets me in my ears every time. Been down to Miami, not quite to Traz Powell Stadium, where Teddy Bridgewater, who just signed with the Detroit Lions, I know he used to throw the rock around down there for Miami Northwestern, but I do plan on going there one time. But the Panhandle always gets this. They have the reputation of providing that Friday night experience that you feel like you only get to see on TV now, because these stadiums they're kind of hit and miss. And I mean, I'm envious of you, because I feel like you're going to get to see a lot more games where they're actually packed out than you are like, man, where's everybody at? Like, they're not here.
Right. Well, I hope so. I've heard recently. I didn't get to do a game at Pace last year. I've heard great things. PHS's coach was talking about what great atmosphere it was. He said it was, he was in Alabama coaching not that long ago, and he said Cantrell, PHS's head coach, Cantrell, Pensacola High School. Apologies. He said that the Pace environment was the best environment he's ever been in as a coach.
Wow.
And, you have that. I mean, Tate High School hasn't had a lot of luck lately. They still get big crowds. They have this fantastic band that's always done well in nationals. So they get this huge groundswell of support as well every week. And you're right. It is a neat place to go because people still go to high school football games.
And you brought up Pensacola. I'm going to say Pensacola Catholic, the Crusaders. That's a team
Right.
that really caught my eye last year. I know they went 10-2. The Crusaders were making their way through the 2S playoffs. They ended up bowing out. But, I mean, Matt Adams and his crew, they had a really good season. I know they graduate Bird at quarterback, but you get CJ Nettles back. Kobe Howard transfers out and goes all the way down to Western, down in South Florida. So I know that was kind of something brought up a couple times at media day, like lost one of our best players in this area to go down to South Florida, which I'll touch on with you on transfers here in a little bit. I know this isn't, people think this is only like a South Florida thing or it's like certain areas. I mean, I think we know this happens everywhere. It's just a matter of how prevalent it happens. But Pensacola Catholic, I mean, there's a lot to like about this group and them kind of doing what they did last year and maybe even beyond.
Pensacola Catholic, like you said, they lost Bird, but they bring in Ryan Huff. And supposedly Ole Miss is looking at Ryan Huff. Well, I'll tell you, Lane's pretty good at picking out good football players. So if he's looking at the kid, CJ, the exception Nettles, is a fantastic running back. You have one of probably my favorite player in the area is DeMontre Gaston. And he's number 8. He plays tight end. He plays linebacker. He runs good routes. And it hurts that Kobe would leave. Obviously, he's one of the great players in the area. It hurts at least, but you got to remember, through no fault, he was hurt last year. So the bulk of the season they played without him. And would they be better with him? Of course. Clemson's already on him. Florida State's already on. Everybody's already wants in on Kobe Howard. But when a guy like that isn't in the offense anymore, it frees up touches for guys like Gaston, for guys like Nettles, for guys like Showers to get the ball and do big things with it. And I will say that Catholic is completely loaded, even without Howard, especially at the skill positions. And so I'm not worried. It's tricky because when you say you're not worried about him, obviously a Howard could be the difference between a state championship and a deep run, but also it frees up opportunities for everybody else to do more. I love the way this Gaston kid plays. I love at the high school level, you get to see this a lot, a guy that plays both ways. And when you can both cover and hit and run clean routes and block for your guys, that's a really oddly complete player. He's going to wind up at Georgia Tech. And I mean, he's going to go to Georgia Tech. He's pretty smart too.
Yeah, I mean, and it almost wants to, I almost want to skip ahead and say who's going to be your guy that's going to break out on the Panhandle, but we'll get to that here in a minute because I'm going to ask you some questions about who do you think is going to be the breakout player team and give me some names. But I do want to touch on kind of like the transfers that have been going on. Just you get a guy like Kobe that leaves. Obviously, some kids kind of migrated over to Fort Walton Beach. Just kind of what's your take on this past off season in the Panhandle for transfers? Has it been kind of higher, like kind of more busy than usual when it comes to kids leaving their schools, or is it kind of similar to what it's been in past years?
Well, I think that here's the thing. Tate, Washington, PHS, Gulf Breeze, Fort Walton all have first or second year coaches. And so that leaves opportunities for people to recruit players, if that's the right word to use, I don't know. But I don't think it's as big a problem as people like to act like it is. I mean, I get that there is a sense of community and you should stay with your school and stuff like that. But if you can go into a situation where you get to play more or you get better opportunities for yourself, for example, this Battle Albertson, right? He's quarterback at Gulf Breeze, returning starter, good football player. He didn't leave. The coach that comes in, what is Greeky? Is that the Gulf Breeze coach's name? All right. He's talking about running a play every 10 seconds. Now, maybe Albertson could have gone somewhere and been on a team that could go deeper into the playoffs. We don't know what Gulf Breeze is going to have. But hey, if I'm a quarterback and I get to run a play every 10 seconds, seems like fun to me, right? So you stay and you run it with your guys. If you feel like if playing time is what's important and you've fallen behind, I get it. If you want to go somewhere else, or if you feel like you have an opportunity to do something else. But these kids are doing their very best to put themselves in a position to get exposure. And I don't blame them, because I'm not blaming the coaches when they go do the same thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does make sense. And I do kind of look at the entire state and see that does happen when coaches kind of see an opportunity. There's coaches leaving the state to go to the other states where supplements are obviously higher, like Georgia, South Carolina, Alabama.
Right.
And they've built the relationships through some years, or maybe a coach has one good year and ends up leaving because he feels like he can kind of take advantage of his name being hot. And you win a title and they say, hey, this guy obviously knows what he's doing. He took a more bound program and was able to win a district title. He might know what he's doing somewhere else. So it's definitely, you're doing what you think is best for you, for your family. But it's at what expense? The kids that thought they had somebody that was going to be there for the long term, not just the interim. And it does happen. And it's kind of this big carousel where I was trying to keep up with the head coaching vacancies around Florida. And I kind of just, at one point, threw my hands up and said, there's too many happening all at once. I mean, it's like we're seeing just a mass exodus of coaches. And I mean, you saw it through the summer. They're still filling vacancies, and you're just getting to know who your head coach is in June and July. I mean, you're talking weeks before the season starts. You didn't have spring ball with them, and now you got to have this, like we said at the outset, we're all good. We're all going to be good. We're all going to win games. We're all going to win district titles.
Right.
But in reality, only the few will win a district title, and there's only going to be a handful that win a state title. And that reality comes into set is like, it's tough. And I think football in general, Kevin, is more of a, what have you done for me lately kind of thing, not a, let's see what he does next year. Let's give him another chance, because it used to be kind of took a while before you made a decision of, this isn't working out. Now it's like, it didn't work out after a year, and it's like, let's go look for somebody else because we can get something better. So I don't know if that's how it is in the Panhandle. Maybe guys just leave because, hey, there's a better opportunity. But I do feel like football as a whole, there is kind of this very short time clock that is becoming it's becoming more and more narrow as time goes on.
Man, I think I'd like to piggyback on that, if that's okay. Because one thing you mentioned was turning over with coaches, getting rid of them if you're not winning, the instant gratification thing, which is probably a societal thing, not just a football thing. But when you have a second year coach, think about it in a recruiting era. If you fire a coach every 2 years, it's going to be really hard to get people to stay in there. Even if a guy has some bumps in the road, if you like what he's doing, you might need to stick with that coach, because he can't get kids to come in or to stay home if nobody knows if he's going to be there next year. It's the same thing that happens in college. The first thing that happens in college when there's rumors about a guy getting fired is negative recruiting. And recruiting's recruiting. If nobody knows for sure who's going to be there, it's easy to go in there and get a kid here or there. And kids transferring from schools has always happened. It's just easier now. So more people are doing. But it used to be you'd have to go rent a trailer in the wrong district or something in order to get to go play there. And now you can just kind of do it. But I'll digress.
Yeah, well, it's like my last thing on this, and then we'll move into the kind of some of your picks. But there was a media day that took place over in Orlando, and JC Carnes of the Orlando Sentinel, he put out a tweet about there was some kids that I interviewed, and they were with another school, and we got quotes and everything. And then I find out a week later, some of those kids are now at another school, and
Wow.
and I said, I don't know if you know of anybody that was at the Panhandle Media Day that already has left and gone elsewhere. I mean, I would be shocked. I feel like it's a little bit closer to kind of the old culture, the old way of things in the Panhandle. That's how I felt when I was around. But like you said, there's still going to be a little bit of that new age over that way. But I requoted it, and I said, that's like meeting your significant other's parents, going in knowing you're going to break up with your significant other before that, and then doing it afterwards. Like, to me, that's equivalent.
Well, I mean, we're right at the beginning of the season.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine. I can't imagine doing that, but that's not me, right?
We could probably talk. That could be its own segment. I literally said with the we just had John Reynolds of Suncoast News Network down in Sarasota, Charlotte, and Manatee counties. I said we could probably have our own roundtable of everyone around the state. I could bring somebody from each of the markets, and we could probably just have a long talk about all this. But the dialogue would be probably endless because there's so many occasions and things that we all see that we're kind of in awe of because of how things are today. But I want to touch on some surprises or some things you're expecting. So I'm going to throw at you, who's your surprise team of 2023? Who's going to be a team that we haven't talked about yet that you think is going to surprise some folks? And who would you pick in 1R, Northview or Chipley, to have a better season? And then my last one for you, give me the player that's going to be the under the radar breakout player. Who's going to be the guy who kind of comes out and surprises folks that we don't know about yet?
Okay, well, that's tough because we've hit on all the good teams. No, I'm just kidding. We've hit on a lot of very good teams. I think we didn't talk a ton about pace, and I think they're going to be really, really good. And I think that's a club that could win. What is that?
They're in 3S.
3S. Okay. They could win that. It's what? Gulfbreeze, Navarre, Pace, State. If Navarre has trouble getting things organized early, Pace could win that over there. They're strong on both sides of the ball. They're getting offensive linemen that are starting to get looks at some of these bigger colleges. They got a good multi-purpose quarterback in Nick Simmons. Tyon Lee is a big physical edge rusher that FSU and Georgia are looking at. And if FSU and Georgia are looking at him, then so is everybody else.
Yeah.
And so I feel like he could be one. Like, if you haven't heard his name much, then I would think that he might be a guy that jumps up into your consciousness as the season wears on. I'm telling you, LaDarian Clarity is the guy. He is the real deal. He can play corner. He can play receiver. And I feel like he's a junior. He's gonna mark. If Escambia does what I think they'll do, he'll be a big part of that. And I think he'll be a guy that people are going, oh, well, the small colleges are looking at him. Oh, well, and then by the time we get to next year, they'll be, oh, okay, well, the big time, whatever you classify big time schools are looking at him, the D1 powers.
All right. And then if you had to pick a small school, this is our last question.
Oh, the Northview question.
Yeah, Northview. Yeah, I know I didn't get into our small schools, but this is how I want to incorporate them. Just Northview went to our state championship game last year. They lose some key guys. I know they got Wyatt Scruggs, but you lost Jamarcus Jefferson, the state's leading rusher. And then you got Chipley over there with Buchanan. I mean, heck, he looks like he could play football right now.
How
Um,
intense is that guy?
oh man, he had some guns. Talking about arms, I was like, man, don't push me, I'll fall over.
Right, right.
Back at running back, and I mean, I know they had a good passing game. You had Quavius Sori there last season, and he's graduated. They're not going to throw the ball as much, and he's talking like Kennedy could be a 2,000. Who knows? Maybe he'll chase Jason Patterson and try to get to 3,000. Maybe they'll be in a race. But who do you like more, Northview or Tripoli?
Here's the trick. Shipley, I think he said they've got 60 kids in their program. Northview's running with 28, 29.
Oh,
And that's just the deal when you're at that level. It's really hard to get like what Chipley's doing, having that many kids. When I was talking to Summerford about their loss to who was it? Hawthorne last year. His team lines up behind him between the 45s.
yeah,
Hawthorne's team is going 20 to 20.
yeah,
You know, we're talking there to their nose tackle, and the kid played every snap of every game. He the only nose tackle they got. So here's the thing: if your starting wide receiver who's leading your team in receptions and interceptions gets hurt, you don't have another guy. It's not that you don't have another guy like that. Like if a player at Catholic gets hurt, they got another guy. But even Chipley, they run with enough numbers that even if they lose a good player, Northview has to have things go well health-wise. And I
right,
like what they're doing. And I loved what Summerford said when he said, hey, these are the kids that have been with me for 4 years. I expect more from them. And when I heard the tailback Wright, who's also one of the leading tacklers, which again leads to my statement, right?
yeah,
When I heard him say, well, you know, I intend to put up the same kind of numbers that Jefferson did the year before. I get that, right? Because he feels like that's the standard here that we've created. But
right,
all it takes is one bump in the road. So the safe bet is Chipley. The safe bet is Chipley. And that guy looks like he's already won it. He's just following the blueprint to get there. And I think Northview's going to be good. And you know, Northview got Chipley last year, you know,
yeah,
and so I think that's a neat rivalry because I don't think either one of those coaches want to go anywhere else. I think they like what they're doing at the
yeah,
level they're doing it at. You know, rural football, is we talked about this the other day. That's a discussion in its own right, you
right.
know, and especially, you know, those communities really get behind them, whether it's Graceville or Chipley or Northview, you know, whether you're good or bad, they continue to show up and support their schools. And that's a neat thing.
It really is, and I even got to talk with the assistant at Graceville. He was so excited to just like talk about Graceville, their new head coach, and just kind of like how they're trying to turn things around. And the program had success in the past, and they want to get back to that. And you know, to hear things like that and know that rural football, these guys are really kind of just really taking it all in and wanting to be there long term. Those are the things like we kind of talked about earlier. You got guys who want to leave when things are really good for them, and you got guys that are at these rural schools that, hey, things could be good, but this is where I want to be. This is where I want to be for a while. Like I don't want to go anywhere. I want to be that coach that's talked about, Marcus Buchanan and Wesley Summerford. They want to be the coaches that people are like, you're going to be chasing how many wins they had until you're done coaching here, like because they were here for 20 plus years. So that's
Exactly right. I coached you, I coached your cousin, and I'm going to coach your son. That's a
well,
neat thing.
yeah. Hey, like I believe I told you, I'm gonna try to get up there one game. Well, not try. I am. I'm gonna get up to that Navarre Niceville game last week of the season. I believe it's November 3rd. If I can ever get up there again, I'd love to link up with you. But I'm excited, Kevin. I mean, the Panhandle's got a lot to offer. I know a lot of folks don't know a lot about what's going on over in the 850, but I feel like being over at the Panhandle Media Day, I got to go to Pensacola Beach, kind of do some little touristy stuff. I was able to say, this is a great place to be at. Not just high school football, but just in general. It seems like just a great place. And if anyone can get up that way, definitely check out a high school football game in that area.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, Kevin, thank you so much for coming on with us. And I got to get you back during the season. We got to touch base again on where these teams are at, our predictions that we kind of talked about, or things we're expecting out of these teams, and we'll see maybe around the midway point. Let's touch back and see where these guys are at.
Anytime. Loved it. Appreciate you. Thank you, Andy.
Absolutely. Well, that's Kevin Perkins with Marketable Sports, and he also has a podcast surrounded by sports. Definitely give it a listen. It's good stuff by Kevin and his crew, and we're looking forward to hearing the coverage of the Panhandle all throughout the season. So I'm Andy Villamarzo, and that's the Coastal episode 4 with SBLive Sports.